Come on.
One day before Christmas, Chris was born, so I don't know if that makes you John the Baptist or not. Probably not. But you know, it was amazing. I work in Stratford, so I work, my office is about a 10-minute walk from Stratford, from Westfield. And last Friday, as I was walking from work here to Westfield to meet my young friend John, sitting right there, I smelled the smell of Christmas trees. They were setting them outside, and as I walked by them, it smelled so familiar. And right away my thoughts went back to my younger days. And I know, yes, that was a long time ago. I know it's obvious, you'd have to confirm.
Very long.
The smell just reminded me of the days leading up to Christmas in my family with my parents. How everyone was looking forward to Christmas and the New Year and the fireworks and everything, which in Curacao are very big. They start setting fireworks on the 27th of December all the way up to the 1st. And usually at that time, the emergency room fills up with a lot of injuries. People losing their fingers, some people losing their eyes. We even had some people dying because of firework accidents. But nonetheless, if you don't get injured by fireworks, it's a great time of the year.
Yeah.
And it just reminded me of that. And then I walked into Westfield here, and it was packed with people. It was packed. But everyone seemed to be happy. Everyone seemed to be relaxed. You could, even if you didn't know the date, you could sense that there was something different. And of course, Christmas would not be Christmas as we know it if it was not for the commercial aspect. Right? Everyone going to buy the gifts, all the stores being open and everything. But today I want to talk about putting Christ back into Christmas. Putting Christ back into Christmas. Ironically, if you know your Bible, you will know that Jesus never ever told us to commemorate his date of birth. He told us to remember his death. Because that's where you see the true character, conviction, and determination of Jesus.
Come on.
That's where his love is made complete.
Yeah.
When we were born, no one said, wow, such an amazing character. Oh my goodness, so talented. Such perseverance. I don't think when Ola was born, his parents said, wow, Ola's so patient. You know, when the baby is born, you don't see anything except the physical appearance. Nothing else is told. But as life starts moving, that's when you start seeing the character, right? That's where you start seeing the weaknesses and the strengths of the person. And what's amazing about Jesus was that he really came through during the most difficult and challenging times of his life. And as we've heard some people say before, you don't know what's in a tea bag until you put it in hot water. That's when it comes out, the color of the water starts changing, and you can actually taste what is inside the tea bag. Well, how do we get to December the 25th being considered the date that Jesus was born? Would you like to know?
Yes.
Now, I'm not against Christmas. So if you want to give me gifts, by all means, please go ahead. I'm not against it, so feel free to do that. But I do think it's important for us to know exactly how things came about so that we don't forget the true meaning and we are aware of what's going on. So Christmas, you know that just a few days ago was the shortest day of the year for the Northern Hemisphere. That's, if I'm not mistaken, December the 21st. That is the shortest day of the year for us living in the north. For those living on south of the equator, it would be the 21st of June. So Chris, you were actually born during a time of great darkness, but that's something Okay? Now the Romans, for them, they believed the shortest day of the year was the 25th of December. And because the 25th was the shortest day, it was also in their minds considered the birthday of the unconquered sun. Because especially if you live in this part of the world, you don't mind the sun, right?
No.
Now where I come from, you always try to escape the sun.
No.
But here, you want to have the sun. And so the Romans called it Dies Natalis Solis Invicti. Exactly. That means, in Latin, that stands for birthday of the unconquered sun. And that was held on December the 25th. So eventually what happened, this holiday, this non-Christian pagan holiday, became mixed with the birth of Jesus. So that's where we get December 25th, Christmas actually from. And the pagan sun was called, meaning the pagan sun god was called Mithra, which obviously is where we get our name Sunday from, the day of the sun. Okay, so that's how we got Christmas. Now, have you ever wondered where in the world came Santa Claus? What in the world does Santa Claus have to do with baby Jesus? Well, I'm going to tell you now. It's actually, the roots are actually Dutch. The roots are actually Dutch. See, in the 4th century there was a bishop. He died in the 4th century in Turkey. And he eventually, whether he really was or the legend developed with time, he was a very giving bishop who really cared about the poor and did a lot of things for the poor. So somewhere along the way in Holland, they found a reason to celebrate. You know, the Dutch are not religious at all. But they like their free days. They like to get their gifts. So maybe that's how Santa Claus in Holland is called Sinterklaas. And supposedly, he lives in Spain. He lives in Spain. And somewhere around the 25th of November, he goes on the ship to Holland, but also to Curacao. Now, how it can be at two places at the same time, I don't know, but apparently he finds a way to manage that. So you have all these kids going to the harbor, and Sinterklaas comes in on a ship with the servants that help him and all of that stuff. Now, here's the really interesting thing. Sinterklaas, if you were a kid growing up in Holland, it would give you great hope, but also great terror. Why? Well, Sinterklaas would bring a lot of gifts. So what you would do, you would go from house to house on his horse, and you would put your shoe with a carrot in it for the horse, or a bucket of water for the horse. And in exchange, Sinterklaas would leave a gift in your shoe. Right? However, sometimes he would visit your house, actually. And you would go to Sinterklaas party. And Sinterklaas was usually a tall guy, kind of looks like the Pope a little bit, dressed like the Pope, with a long red head, pointed head like a bishop, and he has a staff, and he's an old guy, and you will go to these Sinterklaas parties. Now here's the bad thing about Sinterklaas. See, if you were good, you would get gifts. But here's why I was usually very scared of Sinterklaas. If you're bad during the year, they would take you with them to Spain.
Oh, whoa.
Well, listen. I'm not done yet. This is the good part. The bags were full of gifts. Once the gifts were given to people, the bag would be filled with the naughty children. they would take them to Spain, throw them in the oven, and make cookies out of them.
Oh.
Yeah. Come on, yes.
So as a child, I was usually scared to death. But miraculously, I always ended up getting some gifts. So I would be very well behaved a few days before Santa Claus. But once he's back in Spain, I would be back to my old self. So anyway, so a lot of these Dutch people that went to the States, to New York, which used to be called New Amsterdam before it was changed into New York, because the British then made a deal with the Dutch. They exchanged what used to be British, that's now Suriname or Dutch Guyana, and the Dutch gave them New York City. So then it was changed from New Amsterdam to New York City. But the Dutch people there, they came with the tradition of Santa Claus. And eventually it was changed to Santa Claus around Christmas. Now, before 1931, Santa Claus came in many different shapes and forms. It could be an ugly guy, a good-looking guy, could be tall, could be skinny, it could be a whiny Santa Claus, it could be a grouchy Santa Claus, it could be a happy Santa Claus. But do you know how we got to the Santa Claus we have now? Coca-Cola. Exactly. Coca-Cola. 1931, they started creating Santa as a well-rounded man. And a jolly man. Dressed in red. And the same artist, year after year, he would change it. It was actually associated with a campaign called Coca-Cola's Thirst Knows No Season campaign. But so eventually Santa Claus has grown up to be what it is now, and now it's pretty much all over the world. So now you know a little bit about how we got to Christmas, how we got Santa Claus. So if you do have a gift, thank the Dutch for that. Just remember me and some other people. Okay, thank you. Now, I have a question for you. When the wise men went to see Jesus, first question is, how many wise men were there?
3.
Okay.
300.
Some say 3, some say more than 3. Okay, just like when Jesus says, but who do you say I am? When the wise men found Jesus, where was he? Okay. Then the last question, besides the wise men, who else were at the manger? Shepherds. Okay. Everything you just said is absolutely false. I knew it. Everything you just said is totally not true. You say, what? Why do we think that? Because we see the stalls, we see the postcards. But if you ever ask yourself, what does the Bible say?
Come on, bro.
You ready to look at it, check that out?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Let's go to Matthew chapter 2. And you're going to be surprised. Matthew chapter 2, verse 9. Okay, I'm going to start reading here. It says, after they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary. So the wise men were not at a manger, they were at a house.
Oh my days.
So all these years you have been completely duped and deceived.
Wow.
But at least now you know. So now you can challenge the other brothers and sisters in the church and see how well they know their Bible, right?
Come on, bro.
Well, how many wise men were there? The Bible doesn't say how many there were. All it says here in verse 11 is, the second part, then bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts. of gold, and of incense, and of myrrh. All it says is that they had 3 different types of gifts. And this is how many wise men there were. All we know is that it was at least 2 of them. Could have been 3, could have been 4, but we don't know. Okay? So now you're probably asking, well, how in the world did I always think it was a manger? You want to know?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go for it. Let's go to Luke chapter 2.
Come on, bro.
Okay.
Interesting.
Teach us, honey.
I'm going to teach you, believe me. Luke chapter 2, verse 15. So now here we're talking about the shepherds, right? When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about. So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger. So when the shepherds got there, Jesus was in the manger. But when the wise men got there, he was in a house. So, contrary to the postcards, the shepherds and the wise men were never together. They got there at separate times. So most likely what happened was that Jesus was born in the manger, the shepherds got there right away. And then later after that, the wise men got there, and by this time, Joseph and Mary had been able to find a house for them to stay in. So let no postcard or Christmas card ever deceive you again. That doesn't mean you can buy them. That doesn't mean you can send them to people. But it's interesting, isn't it? How we were so certain about certain things. We accepted them as gospel, but yet now we know they're not gospel. They are just tradition. Now, in this case, does it make a difference? Not really. It's like the same as you're rooting for Chelsea or you're rooting for Arsenal. You know, it doesn't really make a difference in your life. Let's go to a much more interesting verse.
Come on.
You know, we celebrate Christmas, and it's really a great time of the year. Where, you know, we get together with family. Oftentimes you see people you literally had not seen the rest of the year. I mean, I grew up on a small island, population at the time, 180,000 people. But as small as it was, there were some relatives I would only see on Christmas.
Yeah, that's true.
Not at any other time of the year. But let's see what really went on at the time of Jesus' birth. Do you want to know?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to Matthew chapter 2. Now, what were the circumstances at the time when Jesus was born? Okay, so you had the Jewish nation of Israel. Were they independent or were they controlled by someone? By who? The Romans, exactly. They were not only controlled, they were very much oppressed. And you have to keep in mind that at the time, you had what I call Messiah fever going on. Everyone, Jewish person at least, was looking for the Messiah. Because they were oppressed and they knew God had promised a Messiah, and they envisioned a political Messiah.
Yeah.
They would free them from the Romans, bring them economic prosperity. But yet, let's see how they reacted when they heard that perhaps the Messiah had been born. So Matthew chapter 2, let's start reading in verse 1.
Come on, bro.
After Jesus was born in Bethlehem, in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi, or Magi, how do you pronounce it? Magi, from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him."
Amen.
Come on.
So we have some smart people in the east. Would you agree with me? There's some wisdom in the east right there, you know?
Come on, Michael.
for one, if you're King Herod and you hear that another king has been born, what's going to go through your mind? I'm in trouble. I'm going to be overthrown. I got competition, right? So, considering King Herod, he was known to be a harsh ruler, extremely selfish and paranoid, we're not surprised that he would be disturbed. But what about the people that lived under his oppression? What about the people that lived under the oppression of the Romans? How would you think they would feel? They should be fired up. They should be excited that, hey, the Messiah has come, because everyone, remember, was waiting for it, right?
Yeah.
Let's keep reading, verse 3. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. So it's fascinating that Herod was disturbed, and as I said, we would expect that, but all of Jerusalem with him was disturbed as well. So why would that be the case if they were longing for a better life, yet when the opportunity arrived, they were disturbed? Well, let's go to Luke chapter 2. Let's go back to Luke chapter 2 to find out some more. A lot of times, we know that we need certain changes in our lives.
Yep.
Yesterday, I saw a picture on Facebook. I don't know if Jermaine put it or someone, but the pictures of a huge crowd of people all like compressed together. And the title said, "The Gym at the Beginning of the New Year." Or I think Frank put it, yes. Why? Everyone right now is setting their goals for the new year, right?
These guys.
And those goals have always included and will always include
The gym.
losing weight, going to the gym, getting healthy, stop smoking, stop drinking, and a lot of others. So the gym indeed is very effective at the beginning of the year, which is great. But as you all know, if you go to the gym, or perhaps you've only been at the beginning of the year and never really lasted long, you know that a few months later the hype is down and the gym is back to normal. Back to the hardcore guys again.
Yeah.
And girls. So a lot of times, as people, we're very interesting. We long for changes. We long for something else because we know we need it. But when it comes, we're scared to death.
Yeah.
Come on, Michael.
Or we don't want to pay the price, or we don't want to make a sacrifice to reach the goal. Can you relate?
Yeah.
Well, let's go to Luke chapter 2. What kind of Messiah was Jesus? So, he was born, the shepherds came, a little bit later, the wise men came, and here now, it's time to present Jesus in the temple, and look at what Mary hears about Jesus. Luke chapter 2, verse 34. Let's start in 33. The child's father and mother marveled at what was said about him. Then Simeon blessed them and said to Mary, his mother, "This child is destined to cause the falling and rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be spoken for, against. So the thoughts of many hearts will be revealed, and a sword will pierce your own soul too." Not exactly the words we associate with Christmas, is it not?
No.
Not exactly the words we associate with Santa Claus. But yet, even the birth of Jesus was controversial. And the people that really understood God's purpose understood not that he would be accepted by most, but he will be spoken against by most. So we have to ask ourselves, why was that the case? And what you'll find is, once we understand why that was the case, it would be no different if Jesus was born today.
Yeah.
You know, we like to think of ourselves as tolerant people, right? Well, we may not agree, but we can get along at least. We can agree to disagree.
Yeah.
But there's a short sentence here. It says, many will fall, others will rise up. But it says in verse 35, so that the thoughts of many hearts will be revealed. Now let me ask you a question. You ready for this? Which one of us would be fired up for everyone to know everything we think? Which one of us would be super comfortable with everyone knowing everything that is in our hearts? It would be challenging, would it not?
Yeah.
But that's exactly what God does. Let's go to John chapter 1.
Come on.
John chapter 1. You say, well, why is that necessary? Well, if you're having health issues that are not superficial, how are they ever going to find out what the problem is? They need to go inside.
Yeah, deep.
They need to go deep. It can be either by an x-ray or some kind of machine, or it can be more intrusive, where they actually have to insert a little camera into your body, so they can really see exactly what is going on. Is that ever comfortable?
No.
Never. Is it necessary?
Yeah.
Well, if you want to live, yes, it's necessary. If you don't want to live, that's not necessary. Well, it's the same with us spiritually. If we want to live, it's necessary for God to go inside of us. If we don't want to live, if we don't want to have eternal life, well, then it's not necessary. But let's go to John chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and the life was the life of men. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not understood it. So what do we learn here? Do people understand true Christianity? No. People understand the traditions of Christianity, like Christmas. People can understand Easter egg hunt. Who doesn't like that? Well, it doesn't impress me anymore, but it certainly did when I was a child, right? So who doesn't like a Christmas tree? But true Christianity, the Bible says, the world has not understood it, and the world still does not understand it. Why? Because true Christianity is what really goes on the inside. No secrets. Complete openness. And that makes us what? Uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what. I remember myself when I was studying the Bible, when I was in the process of becoming a disciple. Well, let me even go before that. Myself and my friend Bill Case, we were playing pool. And these guys were coming up to us. I didn't know them, I'd never seen them before, to my knowledge. I was at university, but I knew these guys were Christians. I don't know how I saw it, I still don't know how I saw it, but I knew there's something different about these guys. And you know when you share your faith, sometimes you kind of like ponder, okay, how do I talk to this person? How do I go about it? And you're thinking, and you finally just get the courage and you do it.
Yeah.
And that's what it seemed like to be with these guys. They kind of hang around, looking around, but, you know, looking at us, but not really looking at us. So I knew these guys were going to come and share their faith with us. And I hated it. I didn't like it at all. So on purpose, I put on a mean face, telling them, don't even talk to me. So they spoke to my friend instead. And I got ticked off. I was like, Bill, what are you doing talking to these guys? And then I saw him giving his contact, and I was like, Bill, like, are you crazy? Oh, this, don't you know what these people want to convert you, make you religious? Yuck! Well, I forgot about it, but Bill later became a Christian.
Come on, Bill.
And months later, he reached out to me. Took me a while, took me a good while, but eventually became a Christian.
Amen.
But here's the thing that I fully understand now. Why was I so upset? I was upset because I was uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable because I knew there were things in my life that could not see the day of light. And I didn't want to deal with them. I just wanted to pretend and continue my life. And that's why I put on a mean face. But see, what I didn't understand at the time, I was putting a mean face towards those people. I was putting a mean face towards God. Right? Have you guys ever heard of a guy named Tony Fadell? Well, not long ago, it may have even been this year, if not a year ago, they interviewed him. And he said, I wake up in cold sweats every so often thinking, what did we bring into the world? What do you think he's talking about? Huh? No. Huh? Getting closer. This man is responsible for the iPod and the iPhone. The iPod and the iPhone.
Yes.
And then he goes on to explain how his grandchildren are totally immersed and addicted
Yeah.
to the iPhone.
Talk about it.
And then if it's taken away, they have withdrawal symptoms.
Yes, that's right, bro. That's right.
They have withdrawal symptoms.
Same thing.
And for you that have Samsung, it applies to you also. For you that have Nokia, it applies to you also. Even the BlackBerry. Yes, even the BlackBerry is black of darkness. You know, and they have done a lot of research, and it is that people, especially if you grow up with this, they just get addicted to instant gratification. Instant gratification. No. And so the people born between 1995 and 2005 are known as the I-Gen, the I generation. All about me and all about I. And combined, and research has been, it is well documented that the excessive use of iPhone or Facebook or Samsung or anything leads to increased depression and suicide for both boys and girls, but especially more so for girls. Now, Facebook a few days ago, believe it or not, Facebook came out and admitted social media is bad for you. I mean, that's Facebook.
Yeah.
That's kind of like McDonald's, Burger King, KFC coming in and saying, we are going to promote people to eat healthy.
Yes.
You know? Even Facebook. So it's a virtual reality, but it's not reality. It looks like the real thing. I have 1,000 friends on Facebook. Wow, I am so awesome. Well, how many people do you have contact with during the week? Come on, guys.
Yeah.
You know, how many people, you have 1,000 people saying happy birthday if your birthday is December the 24th. But how many people actually really care and love you? Don't worry, Chris, we love you, we all love you. Don't get insecure. It's a virtual reality, it's not the real thing. And in the same way, many people today live in a virtual world. It's not a real world. And God's going to say, guys, open your eyes, get into the real world.
Yeah.
What is the virtual world? Well, the virtual world is, I must have this amount of money to be happy. I must have this car to be happy. Let me not deal with my issues, but let me drink them away. Let me not find confidence and trust in God. Let me just light up a cigarette whenever I'm anxious and nervous, so I can calm down.
Yeah.
Let me not have true, deep friendships and relationships with relatives and brothers and sisters. But let's talk about the best football team in the world.
That's true.
Let's see if it's Barcelona or Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. And we go through life sick on the inside, but looking happy on the outside.
Yeah.
Let's go to Mark chapter 10.
Come on.
I can totally relate to that. Why? That was me 100%. And perhaps you can relate to this.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You know, because Jesus said in John chapter 10, verse 10, he said, I have come to give you life and life to the full.
Yeah.
But to be filled with God, you first need to be emptied of the world.
Yeah.
You know, we grow up, we get stigmatized, we get sinned against. It can be things like being called names, or it can be a lot more serious things like sexual abuse. You know, we grow up in a family perhaps that's dysfunctional, or perhaps everything seems to be okay, but yet you sense there is something missing. And those things, they affect us. They change. Let me tell you something. I just got healed from stuff that happened to me when I was 12, 13, 14 years old last year. But it only happened because I'm a disciple. And I have people in my life that I can just be really open with and honest with. And I was sitting with Micheal and Micheal, I just broke down and started crying, and it wasn't planned, but everything from my past just came up. And it was an incredibly awesome moment,
Yeah.
because it needed to happen to me.
Come on, man.
But that's why sometimes it scares us to follow Jesus. Because we've built our life on a foundation that is the wrong foundation, but yet it is a foundation. And we're used to it, and we're afraid to break it down for fear of what's going to happen. Because what is good and normal seems bad and abnormal, because we've been used to bad and abnormal for so long. Well, Mark chapter 10, and this is really my favorite scripture in the whole Bible. It definitely is in the top 3.
Whoa.
Let me share it with you. Mark 10:32. They were on their way up to Jerusalem, with Jesus leading the way, and the disciples were astonished, while those who followed were afraid. This is not the Jesus you see on the postcards, is it now? This is not the Jesus you see on the Christmas cards. He had people following him. He went up to Jerusalem, and his disciples, those really close to him, like for sure the 12, they were astonished. Now, what's the big deal going up to Jerusalem? Well, Jesus going up to Jerusalem, they knew the people were looking to kill him. They knew He had made a lot of enemies because he preached the truth, exposed people's hypocrisy, challenged people to change, and the people didn't like it. Those that liked it changed, but those that didn't like it became Jesus' enemies. And so he was going back to the viper's nest where the most powerful people in all of Israel lived. And they were astonished at his courage, but the others, they were afraid. Now, let me ask you, have you ever been astonished at Jesus?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Have you ever been afraid to follow Jesus? Yes. Let me put it this way. If you've never been afraid to follow Jesus, it's because you have not followed Jesus.
Yeah.
If you've never been astonished by Jesus, it's because you're not a follower of Jesus. Because before you follow Jesus, you have to be astonished by him.
Yeah.
And understand, no man like Jesus has ever lived throughout the history of the earth to live as he did. But it's interesting because it says Jesus was leading the way. Have any of you grew up like this? Your parents didn't go to church, but they sent you to church.
Yeah.
Your parents never went, but you do need to go.
Yeah.
Right? Have you ever heard preachers preaching things that they demand from the congregations, but they themselves do not do it?
Yeah.
Not biblical. On the other hand, you also have the preachers that don't preach anything. No conviction. Well, let me not challenge them, because that means that I'm going to be challenged myself. So you got lukewarm, wishy-washy preaching. Jesus wasn't like that. So how do we put Christ back into Christmas? Well, first of all, it shouldn't be only Christmas. It should be every single day of our lives. So I want to ask you today, have you grown in the year 2017? If you compare your faith to earlier in the year, is your faith stronger? How do you share your faith? Do you have more conviction and more boldness when you share your faith? How is your openness? Are you open with your life? Or are you the great pretender? I think there's even a song like that, a long time ago. Guys, we got to make a decision to put Christ back into Christmas. I mean, Jesus came to give us life to the full. What better life would there be than to live in obedience to God? I've been a disciple now 27 and a half years. I think Maria, 31 years.
Come on.
31 years. Now, hold the applause because it's not bad, but you got to make it to the end, you know what I mean? So, you got to be faithful until the very end, for sure. But I oftentimes ask myself, what would my life be like if I were not a disciple? And you know, the older I get, the more the answer to that question scares me to death.
Yeah.
What would my life be like if I were not a disciple? I'm just super grateful to God for his mercy, for his patience, for his kindness. All the time that he walked with me, stayed with me, even though I was a knucklehead, even though I was a head of flint, whatever you want to call it, and I was in my rebellion. But just a few months ago, God stripped me of my idols, of my heart, through discipling and circumstances. And you know how painful it is when you have a wound and you have the Band-Aid and you take it off while the wound is not healed yet.
Yes.
It's very painful. And even though it was painful, man, you know how I feel now? Free.
Yeah.
Grateful. happy, confident. And I pray that for all of us, that will be the year 2018.
Amen.
Now, I'll be down again,
Yeah,
I'll be up again.
yeah.
That's just life. That's especially life in the kingdom. You know, one day a top dog, the next day a dog meat.
Yeah.
You know, hey, what do? You lick your wounds and you move on, right? That's why Jesus died for our sins. It's very interesting. Jurgen was studying the Bible with a guy, and when they did the sin study, he said, no, I have no sin whatsoever. Yeah.
Jesus.
They asked him, have you ever had a bad thought? Never. Never.
You know.
I was like, wow. You know, if I was there studying with him and say, you know, that's amazing. You know what it means? What? You can actually be crucified for my sins. That means you're eligible to die for our sins. Would you like to do that? It doesn't happen.
No.
Guys, you know, we all need help.
Yeah.
We all need God, don't we?
Yes.
So let's put let's put Christ back into Christmas. But most of all, and here's the last challenge, put Christ back in your heart.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen.